Section 4. The Path of the Market. The earth is generous, as we have stressed many times, and has never charged us a penny. All costs are labor costs. Labor cost falls into two parts. One is the labor we have already completed in the past. The other is the labor going on now. The two stand in a relationship of division of labor and cooperation, and they share the profit, GDP. Past labor includes money, technology, experience, knowledge, machines, equipment, vehicles, infrastructure, housing, ground floor shop premises, office buildings, factories, tools, software, and other tangible and intangible assets. Since the present in the end becomes the past is a cumulative value. Past equals sigma present, or, put another way, a perpetually growing value. The absolute share of past labor contributed to a commodity therefore shows a steadily rising trend, and the return it demands grows at a relatively stable rate, n%. When the rate of market growth, m%, exceeds the rate at which assets demand their return, n%, the share that present labor takes goes up. When the reverse holds, the share that past labor takes goes up. The market plainly cannot grow without end. When investment is completed and then gradually withdrawn, market capacity contracts. Market capacity, W, then begins to collapse structurally, while the return demanded by assets, that is by past labor, keeps rising. The share taken by the past keeps growing. Even when it exceeds 100% of GDP, this rise does not stop. As the share taken by the past keeps rising, the share that present labor receives keeps falling. In the end, the share taken by present labor falls to 0%. At that point, the past covers over the present, and the market enters a state of death. Financial crises, unemployment, and waves of corporate bankruptcies arrive together. The aggregate value of the past is restructured. The return on the past therefore drops sharply. The past, however, is not reset to zero. The past redefines its aggregate value by pressing right up against the limit of what the present can endure. Put simply, once the structure of distribution has been distorted, asset restructuring only repairs the system on the foundation of that distortion. The repaired structure leaves the ordinary person permanently in a payday-to-payday state. From this mathematical model, we again derive that the market's path follows a zero-WO cycle. In a market structure where the past covers over the present, every field moves towards monopoly, innovation is held in the hands of a few, and the market as a whole becomes artful and clouded. The clouded objective shape determines the subjective brain-dead way of thinking. The cause of the brain-dead state is that labor without return and labor at a loss leave thinking with no logical foothold. The brain-dead structure shows itself in different ways under different market forms, but its essence does not change. The brain-dead market structure leaves information in a fragmented state. It easily becomes a breeding ground for conspiracy and conspiracy theory. It is also a breeding ground for war. In the brain-dead market structure, the zero-sum game is the typical way of thinking. The brain-dead market is a high-cost market, a market on the edge of death. In such a market, technology and talent become unprofitable. The same technology and talent, at the margin of this market, can earn far higher returns. Once a market enters its brain-dead cycle, the outward migration of technology and talent follows by necessity. This is the root force behind industrial migration. This mathematical regularity, which is an objective fact, effectively protects the diversity of civilization. The model tells us that every traditional civilization eventually locks itself in, and that new civilizations appear at the edge of the old ones. Looked at through the lens of savings, we can derive the rule that civilization always sits at the edge of civilization. The analysis above leads to the same conclusion. Civilization always sits at the edge of civilization. Once any civilization enters its brain-dead cycle, it goes into a state of self-lock. The geographical center of civilization therefore moves in one direction, and the movement is non-reversible. Put plainly, each civilization, under a given civilizational form, can flourish only once. The mathematical model decides this. In agricultural society, the sums sigma power, sigma conflict, sigma religion, and sigma culture are all continuously cumulative values. And each of these is part of the reason that innovation locks itself out. Reforming an old structure that civilization has locked is far harder than building on virgin ground. Civilizations of the same type therefore move in one direction only. One could also say that civilization moves as the centaur of the market moves. The lead in social development is always in the hand of the objective. The objective is the mathematical model OWO gives, OW10 gives, OW20 gives, and so on. Wn is a variable, and it is also the saturation value. Before a civilization reaches saturation, the society is full of positive energy, and its momentum cannot be stopped. Civilization expands from near to far, ring by ring. The decline cycle of the first ring overlaps with the rise cycle of the second. The rise cycle of the third overlaps with the decline cycle of the second. To take an example, the Napoleonic Age overlapped with France's expansion cycle. France was unstoppable and swept across Europe. When France's expansion cycle ended, Germany entered its rise cycle. The Franco-German Wars reversed. France, facing Germany on its own, has never won. In the same way, Egypt, the most ancient civilization, after entering its W20 cycle, became a clown that anyone could trample at will. The same applies to ancient Greece, ancient Rome, and Spain. The market's development in geographical terms has another feature. It does not extend by jumping. Industries, technologies, and talent follow the principle of migrating to nearby places. There are two reasons for this. The first is the cost factor. The old civilization provides the new civilization with a large market, and this is how the new civilization keeps drawing in outside savings and bringing local innovation to life. The further the new civilization sits from the old, the higher the cost of supply. The cost of transport eats into the advantage that lower social operating cost would otherwise give. The second is the cultural factor. The closer to the old civilization, the more similar the objective conditions, and the more similar the culture and habits, and the easier it is to copy the old civilization. One point deserves particular attention. The actual market distance and the actual geographical distance are not the same. A shorter geographical distance does not always mean a shorter market distance. The reason is that water transport costs at least X% less than continental transport. This continues to hold today. Market capacity cannot grow without end, but the size of past accumulated assets does grow without end. The inner ring social operating cost overflowing GDP is therefore a logical necessity. From the angle of an industry, every industry is finite, while the operating cost of an industry is a continuously rising value. At the early stage of a market, the growth rate of industry capacity outruns the growth rate of industry operating cost. The typical mark of this stage is low-end production with high profits. Almost every enterprise can earn handsomely. Industry employment grows fast. The number of enterprises rises sharply. As investment is withdrawn, the industry begins to feel the impact. Market demand collapses. The operating cost of the industry, however, keeps surging. The market channels social operating cost into the industry through the costs of labor, rent, and capital. The industry's operating cost coming to exceed the industry's revenue is, then, a logical necessity. At that point, the wave of bankruptcies arrives on schedule. Only the enterprises with the leading net profit margin escape the fate of bankruptcy. What follows is the move of the industry towards monopoly, and employment is forced to migrate outwards into newly rising industries. From this basic model, we can see that the outcome of market development is monopoly. No government, no institution, and no individual can stop it. 100 years ago, the American government broke into 8 pieces, the predecessor of ExxonMobil. 100 years later, ExxonMobil still stands before the world as a super monopoly. The monopoly that forms naturally through market competition is highly efficient. Take ExxonMobil as an example. The company has only 86,000 employees. It generates annual revenue of more than $400 billion, and it produces net profit of more than $40 billion. Revenue per employee is above $5 million, and net profit per employee is above $500,000. Since monopoly is the unavoidable result of market development, the practical question is how to make monopoly serve us and how to build the most efficient form of monopoly. The path of an industry follows the same rule as the geographical movement of the whole market. Innovation always sits at the edge of innovation. The development of industries traces a parabolic curve. The decline cycle of the first industry overlaps with the rise cycle of the second. The decline cycle of the second overlaps with the rise cycle of the third, and so on. No market and no industry can develop by jumping. The social efficiency accumulated by the old industry is just enough to meet the startup requirement of the new one. The Chinese market took roughly 30-odd years to develop from the ox cart era to the motor car era. The short span of time has made it easier to observe and to identify the path the market runs. The sequence ran through agriculture, the sewing machine, the watch, the bicycle, transport horse cart, then tractor, then agricultural vehicle, then light truck, then middle truck, then heavy truck, black goods, black and white televisions, then color televisions, and so on. White goods, washing machines, refrigerators, digital IT, the desktop computer, telecommunications, the landline, the mobile phone, and on to the smartphone, the motor car, property, luxury goods, and information, the internet. We cannot leap from the age of the bicycle straight into the age of the car. Purchasing power will not support a great leap forward. Behind the lack of purchasing power lies low social efficiency, a too high share of human-supplied energy and commodities, and a too low share supplied by machines. If we treat the market as a flat diagram, the path traced by every economy is strikingly similar. The British market's industrial path ran through agriculture, transport, chiefly shipbuilding, a timber crisis that gave way to coal, textiles, the canal, heavy industry, coal, iron and steel, machinery, the steam engine, and the railway. The American market's path runs the same way: agriculture, transport, chiefly shipbuilding, textiles, the canal, the bicycle, and the horse cart, heavy industry, coal, iron and steel, machinery, the railway, a whale oil crisis that gave way to oil, electricity, the motor car, and so on. The sequence of industrial development and the direction of geographical industrial migration are equally non-reversible. The rise cycle of an industry is unstoppable. In this cycle, those working in the industry put in 50% and receive 100% in return. They put in 100% and receive 200%. Expectations are exceeded and the market rewards them at the same time, a double reward that makes every worker in the industry willing to give 100% of their effort. The whole industry is filled with positive energy. This is more effective than any system of management. The rise cycle of an industry produces its star firms. In the era of the old three big items, the star firms were Phoenix, Forever, Flying Pigeon, Shanghai, and the rest. In the black goods era, the star firm was Chang Hong. In the white goods era, it was Haier. In the agricultural vehicle era, they were Geely and Shifeng. In the light truck cycle, it was Fotong. In the middle truck era, they were Fa and Dongfeng. In the heavy truck era, they were Sinotruk and Shanxi. The market often dresses an individual firm in mythology, and that mythology covers up the real path of market development. Before 2000, Sinotruk, the Chinese steel industry, and the Chinese metallurgy industry were all close to bankruptcy at roughly the same time. From 2000 onwards, the Chinese market gradually entered its urbanization stage and began large-scale borrowing against future savings. Heavy trucks, steel, metallurgy, and the car industry were brought back to life at once. This shows that the solution to the problem did not lie inside these industries. The solution came from the next outer layer being activated, which was urbanization. In the same way as Table 117 shows, the agricultural problem was solved when transport and trade were brought to life. Black goods spread when white goods entered the home. White goods spread when IT and digital products entered the home. IT and digital products spread when the car entered the home. The car spread when property was opened up. Property was resolved when employment could migrate from the physical sector into the information field. High-efficiency outer industries naturally absorb the labor of society, and that allows consumption in the inner layers to come about easily. The former glory of Changhong and Haier was built on the rise cycle of their industries. It was not built on what is called lean management. In the market's decline cycle, workers in the industry put in 100% and receive only 50%. The mismatch between input and reward is the root cause of corporate decline. The development of an industry is therefore non-reversible. Truly efficient enterprises can only come from the outer layer of the industry chain. Chinese enterprises often fall into the thinking trap of detail decides success or failure. Haier has close to 60,000 employees and generates revenue of only 150 billion yuan. Plot Haier's revenue per employee against GDP as a curve, and a clear parabolic path becomes easy to see. If Chinese firms like Haier cannot find their way back from this wrong path, cannot shake off the thinking habits of an unlimited market and unlimited fine-tuning, the fate waiting for them in the end is bankruptcy alone. Relying on government subsidy or pinning their hopes on the government to catch them when they fall will certainly not solve the problem. In the age of intelligent automation, what is called lean management will in the end produce a continuously rising labor cost and an innovation capacity that locks itself out. The core competence way of thinking holds that the key to solving the problem lies in the inner layer. The objective tells us that the key lies in the outer layer. If the outer layer is not unlocked, no amount of tossing and turning in the inner layer can solve the problem. Employment numbers do not change. The market's self-decay is an objective fact. To draw the threads together, the market expands outwards in a spiral pattern of 0 to W, both in geographical and in industrial terms. This is the market's dynamic model. Power drove the age of discovery. Capital drove industrialization and urbanization. Intellect drives intelligent automation. Whoever leads decides how profit is distributed. Power sits in the inner layer of capital. Intellect sits in the outer layer of capital. In logical terms, the relationship between power, capital, and intellect is one of grandfather, father, and son. The settled mistake of received thinking is to keep hoping that power will overcome capital and to push the demand for innovation back inwards, that is, to hope the government will solve the problem. This is plainly not objective. The reason for America's prosperity is that ordinary Americans at the base of society pushed it forward, not the government.